about yourself, and then, try to lead us off on this discussion about, the benefits of transitioning to a smart city, but how STEAM-related fields can actually benefit women, and what this could actually mean for women in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Monique, and all the ladies and MMC. So great to be part of this occasion. So I've been in the tech industry for all my career, so the last 18 years. And I've had the privilege of doing various roles, so starting from being a developer and then moving to the front end of IT, which is really beginning to interact with the business. So doing the software design, and ultimately now moving into strategy, specifically digital strategy. And part of my journey for me has been about discovering what my bent is and what part of this space of technology is me best. I think there's a stereotype when we think about technology, people, we all have to be coders. And what we're learning as that fourth industrial revolution is beginning to show itself and we're beginning to embrace it in different spheres of life is that there is so much room. And part of everyone's journey, I believe, is you have to begin where you fit. Because if we think about any app that exists, there was someone that had to think about what does the customer need and what do they need to experience, right down to creating it. So as we think about the smart city, certainly, one of the things that are going to make this possible and a success is firstly, I think, a very inclusive collaboration in the design thereof. What we're seeing now in the trend, whether it's an app, whether it's a business, and this is really coming from strategy, what we're seeing a lot now is no longer strategy being you call the rest of us consultants and we sit in a dark room and leave you with a very big manual that you need to figure out how to implement. If we want to design a smart city, it has to be customer focused, people focused. And the only way you do that is you bring everyone into the room at the design and conceptualization phase. Of course, techies will come and help you digitize it and make it amazing. But, there's this notion now in the technology space called agile development, where we make sure everyone has a voice. Now, COVID-19 has showed us in countries led their plight in getting out of this. They've been primarily led by women. So I would say anything, as the city begins to think about the city, you want to bring women in that design station. These are women that, mama, that they sell their potatoes, women in agriculture, as the MMC has said, women that are delivering services, mothers, businessmen must be part of that design, because there's something intuitive about us that already thinks inclusively and already wants to consider access for everyone else. This thing must work. And if anything, when it got to start with that, to say a design has to be inclusive of the normal person's voice, and specifically women.
Mm-hmm. And Leslie, can I ask you the same question? Just, about your journey, and then also how you see smart cities and the requirements of a smart city shaped, and how we bridge the gaps between skills and between the skills required by the industry and what our universities are putting out. You head up Shlomo Kong, which we know is a digital hub under Wits University. So perhaps you can give us a bit more insight into what you all are planning to do.
Perfect. Thank you, Monique. So firstly, I totally aligned with everything Karabu had to say, which is absolutely fantastic. So I can build on it, not contradict it. So I think the first to say that becoming a smart city is not static. And what was relevant 5 years ago or 3 years ago may not be relevant right now. you look at the time of like COVID and what this moment requires, it may even require something different now than 6 months ago or 8 months ago when we entered the year. And that takes a certain kind of mindset. Karaba spoke about agility. Like what is now? I think like developing the mindset within the broader team to citizen city like. And that means those skills of like having empathy, being quick on response, having those decision makers, being inclusive, that was mentioned. And I agree that a lot of those skills tend to become more naturally to women, if you like. And when you start looking at teachings around design thinking, that is one of the key, like well-known tools for innovation of late. The principles literally start with understanding the problem, like building empathy with the end user and designing with them in mind, and including people who are affected in decision making and in the design of the solution. So even so, it's not like Rob said, like operating in a black box. Even when the solution with the experts, etc., it's about going back to the end user and the citizen and testing it before it goes to market. Now, when I say like my thinking's also evolved quite a bit, is because I essentially come from a social entrepreneurship background. I set up Impact Hub in 2010, which is essentially the first co-working space and hub for social entrepreneurs. And what I came to see is that a lot of people and communities really understand the problems that they are facing. But for me, one of the gaps was that we often lack engineering skills, tools and framework to solve some of those issues. And not everything is high tech. I want to say that some of it is, assets that already exist within the community. And it's about building that confidence to see the assets and understanding sometimes that there is agency within the community, and the community wants to come along and build their solutions. So coming to our work at Simolofong Precinct, the reason why we exist is that we want to take African digital innovation to global markets. And what that means for us is that we're solving local problems first to global excellence, and with a mindset and frameworks to take it to global markets. So we developed quite a lot of mechanisms to support our entrepreneurs to work at that quality, where the technology works, where the back, the backward basement. What we have in our pocket that is an opportunity is that we are actually seeing that even though we have fewer software is in terms of productivity and performance from a job creation perspective. And when we dug deep and we asked, like, why aren't you growing so fast? Like, what are the issues? They said, look, Johannesburg's fantastic from an access to market perspective. I think that's an asset we need to build on. They said, look, one of our key issues is access to finance. But we can even overcome that if the access to market value chain is, but the key is access to talent. And for me, that is where we really need to invest in skills. Now, the thing is that engineers, etc., coming out of university are being absorbed quite fast into corporate market, especially in the bank, and are skewing salaries So a lot of startups, SMEs can't afford the talent. And this is where, for me, look at alternative models and not just say, okay, we're all taking graduates, but how do we work with unemployed youth to have the losing like the attitude to become developers and work with them. But like Karabu said, not all of us need to become developers. I think if you look at the future, 5 years ago, developers was a thing, and it's still required. But all of us need to at least have some form of digital literacy, computational thinking, so we know how to access data and manipulate tools for outcomes. So I think I'll leave it for there for now.
Awesome. No, thank you. Actually covered it very well and gave a lot of detail as to what some of the critical issues are. And coming in there, I mean, because you're highlighting about skills, but we know that one of the issues with even developing the skills or developing the competency is still getting access to those platforms. So, Palisa, you develop platforms and modules and curriculum that help to start creating conduits for young people and women to get into the industry. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you are seeing challenge there is with accessibility, the numbers of programs, or how and where is it that we should start reaching young women in order to make sure we can segue them into these careers going forward?
Wow. Oh, thank you very much, ladies. It's such an honor to be part of. Thank you very much, MMC and the City of Johannesburg. It's quite an interesting times now that we are trying to dive in and catch up as South Africa, more especially in the education sector. STEAM education existent for quite a long time, and now the emphasis and the agency of pushing more skills to address the scarce skills for the skills of the future. I'm looking at the opportunities where young people can access these skills freely and also be able to communicate, reach out, especially to mostly disadvantaged communities where young people are aware of the skills that are needed in the future, so that when they choose careers, they're able to choose careers that are going to solve the current and the future socioeconomic challenges. Importantly, now that we are talking about digitization, smart cities, what are the opportunities where the city can start exposing young people, women, more especially the informal sector, in the like your street vendors in the city of Joburg, or even in the communities where they can tap into opportunities. So we're currently focusing on driving skill development in the digital space, digital scarcity skills, where we partner with different organizations, the Department of Education, and obviously the cities, city metros, where we drive and campaign the digital. We do a lot of boot camp and coding and programming, just to give these young people an opportunity to see themselves creating something that they can even start self-employment. We don't have to wait for kids or for youth to graduate at the university and then start realizing that, I can become an entrepreneur, or I can start a small business. We're looking at young people currently across the world. They are running their own small businesses on their sizes. We need to catch up and push our young people to tap into these opportunities that are already. So I believe that and working together and building different stakeholders, where we start pushing the skill development, we start pushing entrepreneurship development on digitization and digital economy. So I would say that it's never too late to start now, with more especially in the schools and in informal businesses. So in terms of content development, we need to change and be on par with what the skills are needed currently and obviously in the near future, because we have a lot of young people that have graduated with the very same ICT skills, but still they cannot find jobs. They cannot create jobs for themselves. So we need to align these challenges that we are currently facing and see what are relevant skills that are needed. Yeah, that will be my take for now.
Thank you. And I'm going to segue to Refuelway. I mean, because you also have an organization that is trying to help expand and create access for young women to, do the boldest of all, which is get into a plane and fly the friendly skies, so to say. And, I'm just imagining how daunting it is, because here I am, an adult, educated, degreed, but still the idea of to get into that machinery and fly. How, how do you make this something that a young say, you know what, I can achieve that. It's accessible to me. It's not too difficult. And how do you translate that through your foundation and getting more women into areas that are not heavily represented by women?
Everyone, thanks, Monique. Quite a very interesting question, because that's pretty much. So I've been in there for the last 20 years. And initially, I enrolled for a Bachelor of Science degree, majoring in biochemistry and microbiology. I've never practiced as a microbiologist, but the degree did give me like a set of that set me up for the future. It gets critical thinking, research, and decision making, and the math skills that we've pretty much been talking about. So I joined the aviation industry 20 years ago as cabin crew. I then flew for the police for 10 years, flew for passenger airliner, and now I'm flying, flew for a corporate. So I think one of the biggest challenge that I encounter in the industry was exactly what you said, lack of information. I want to quote Sally Ride, one of the astronauts, who said young girls need to see role models in whatever careers they might choose, just so they can see themselves doing those jobs one day. Meaning you can't be what you can't see. So Going back to the question again, growing up, I never knew that I could become. I never saw people that look like me, that sounded like me doing the job. So I think one of the critical things, and that before I can even get to that actually led to my entrepreneurial spirit as well, because we needed to address that. Because before we can even go anywhere else, these young girls, the first thing that they need to do, they need to see us doing those jobs. They need to see us making the maths look cool, the sciences looks cool, looking cool. Then they know that those careers are accessible. And by telling our stories, telling them where we come, our background, that are very much similar to their background as well, that will pretty much take that, you said it's daunting, it's daunting for you, but it will take that fear away, because again, they see people look like them doing that job, and they're like, you know what, but I can do that. If you can do it, I can do that. And I think that's where, the fun, comes in, where we wanted to create an inclusive environment where these girls can see people that look like them doing all these awesome things and know that it is actually possible. But I want to as well highlight, the issue of gender in that industry, that currently, for example, globally, we've got less than 5% of female pilots. That's globally, not even in South Africa. 8% of female engineers. Drone pilots, the number is slightly high. And CEOs in the airlines, currently we've got less than 3%. So we really have a problem, with the statistics and where we are in the aviation industry. And I can see that how that impacts as well the statistics in the STEAM industry. But moving away from the statistics, everyone has spoken about it. 75% of the jobs are going to need STEAM, whether it's, the drone industry, the aviation industry, traditional, flying industry. And if we do not get these women involved, or if we do not get these girls involved, they will be left behind. You will have that 75% of the workforce where women are not represented, and that will impact on the overall set of the overall economy, the context of economy. So my foundation, we pretty much want to make sure that going forward, 25% that get to participate in that, getting to participate in those future jobs. And we do it obviously through various programs. And one of them, I think, that links very nicely to the smart city is the drone technology, where we have opportunity to not only give them information about the drone ecosystem, but how to actually get into that industry and how it links, to the future of smart city. I think for now, I'll just stop there.
I was jotting away. I was ready for a few more extra paragraphs coming. Very interesting. I mean, but a lot of, I think we're having a conversation about disruption. So I'm going back to Refuelway again, and looking at disruption and how do we disrupt the way that we see women in technology. I mean, how do women disrupt their thinking in order for them to embrace these STEM fields? I mean, a lot of what I think you were saying is the need for critical thinking. Someone else, women have often been the ones who broadly look at what people's needs are in the family or in their community. They start to create solutions around that. How do we link all of those intrinsic views that we have as women into these fields of the STEAM so that they can actually see that you already have the beginning and trappings and foundations of these big things. So, how do we disrupt that thinking?
I think we need to make them relatable. When we talk about STEM or 4IR, we always talk about it on a very high level, and we never actually relate to how it can solve